Greetings and salutation, Buzzketeers. Yes, the console wars have begun. Xbox One is out on the anniversary of John Kennedy's death. Interesting. Welcome to another episode of Buzzsaw.
Central Intelligence Agency.
It was described by witnesses as...
Coming up today on Buzzsaw, we're going to look at three senators who are going to try to tear apart the IRS from the bottom up. We're also going to look at the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and we're going to roll my nice lower third right below me. Joining me to deliver the news today, as always, is my co-producer and co-host, Tabitha Wallace. Tabitha, what do we got today?
We got a lot this week. As you said, it's the 50th anniversary of the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And this week we have some great, keep your eyes out this weekend. We have a panel with you and Sean and some very interesting authors. Keep your eyes open, some interviews talking about, you know, single bullet theory, Warren Commission, other fictionalized things in U.S. history. But starting out into this week, besides JFK, one family and one group of people that I just try not to talk about as much as possible, but I couldn't ignore it because Kim Kardashian has announced she is not, in any way, a part of the Illuminati. This came to light after she posted a picture, as you'll see, with her Brittany Gastineau, who is another celebrity part of the reality world, and she posted the picture, which was a triangle and an eye, as you see, which of course a whole bunch of people on Twitter got all over about being in the Illuminati, and her response to which was, "What's the Illuminati?" which I find hilarious since her friends. I honestly, no, I don't think Kim and Kanye are in the Illuminati.
No, they're like the people like knocking on the door saying like, "Please let us in, Jay-Z, Beyonce, we really want to come in and join your party."
Exactly.
But we really can't because we spend all of our time looking at ourselves in mirrors.
Isn't that what the Illuminati is all about?
No, they're global domination and control. Like Kanye and Kim are more about, you know, ego and, you know, some good music, actually. I don't mind Kanye's music.
I like Kanye.
But, you know, what do we got next?
So that's it, you know? This is the thing about the Illuminati. It's either you're not or you are, or whatever. It's always very funny. There's a group in Africa that
he actually could call that we did that story about, that like you can buy your way into Illuminati for like $1,000. And I know Kanye got $1,000
He's
laying
got
around.
$1,000, yeah.
You know,
you
he
should
can knock
do
that one out
that.
real
It'd
quick.
be great. I say just leave the Kardashians alone. They're not in the Illuminati. They never will be. If the Illuminati exists, they're not getting in. Beyonce already took her place. It's fine. They're good. Speaking of Hollywood things, I mean, this is you make the Hollywood and the Illuminati and politics, it all sort of gets all mixed up together. But what we don't realize that when in a not so joking situation, when celebrities and Hollywood types get a little too close to politics and the underworld that we talk about here, immediately following the sudden and shocking death of actress Brittany Murphy in 2009, it was announced that the cause was pneumonia and anemia. Everything from drug abuse to eating disorders was bandied about, but the coroner insisted it was natural causes. When her husband, Simon Monjack, died of the exact same natural causes merely 5 months later, Murphy's friends and families decided to take a closer look. This week, her father, Angelo Bertolotti, just make sure I pronounce his name right, Angelo Bertolotti, released a report from a Colorado lab that seems to suggest that Brittany and her husband were poisoned. The damning report found that Murphy's body, had dramatically elevated levels of aluminum, manganese, barium, and other metals associated with what they call a third-party perpetrator with likely criminal intent and not accidental environmental causes. So who would poison a movie star? According to Bertolotti, Murphy had been working with actress Julia Davis, who is also a whistleblower on a film, and had even testified for Davis during Davis's lawsuit against the government for wrongful imprisonment. They had earlier accused her of being a domestic terrorist. As with any declarations like this, we have to remember that the tests were performed privately without a documented chain of evidence, and that law enforcement has not, as of now, reopened the investigation. However, as we've learned from the Snowden papers, targeting movie stars for their political beliefs is standard procedure. The question now is, how far would they go?
You know, it's always really interesting when you get cases like this because, you know, yeah, there's like tabloid kind of sensationalism that like follows it around. And, you know, I remember with like the Quaids, you know, Randy Quaid, you know, had said that there was, you know, somebody coming after him and his wife for their political beliefs. I think they even fled to Canada at some point. Might still be there for all I know. You know, so there's always a certain amount of like, okay, is this just that celebrity tabloid culture kind of, you know, pontificating where there really isn't any smoke, any fire.
Right.
But, you know, the fact that her husband died 5 months later of basically almost the same thing always makes you kind of raise an eyebrow like, okay, this is strange. Angelo Bertolotti was quoted as saying, "Brittany did tell me she was under surveillance, and incidentally, so was I." So, I mean, there was some talk of surveillance and some talk of following around within the family, you know, saying, yeah, Big Brother could be watching us. And if she was associated with this girl Davis, I mean, that could very well be.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I think it's funny because her husband had insisted that, that when the drug abuse claims had come up, there was this idea of that, you know, it was clearly just cocaine, she overdosed, that was it. But as her husband had stated, and many have confirmed this, that she had a heart murmur and that she was terrified of doing any sort of narcotics or those kind of drugs because it could kill her. So it was sort of impossible for her to use stimulants and that.
That's interesting. That's interesting. As you know, again, it's kind of that thing of like, how much do we know, how much we don't know. We don't know what was going on in their private lives. We don't know if that is a true statement from her husband. If this heart murmur existed, maybe it did, maybe it did. We don't know.
I mean, you have a whole situation where we have a lot of people who have said that it was a strange relationship, that they were very closed off, that there was a lot that people didn't know about what was going on, but that they were both very nervous and very, very paranoid. If you are being poisoned with heavy metals, one of the major side effects of something like that is paranoia. So if someone, it's one of those things like, were they paranoid and that made them think they were being poisoned, and you know, whether these reports and whether these numbers are right or not or legitimate. It's sort of like, were they poisoned and that's why they were acting paranoid? Were they paranoid because they were being followed? And how does it all
how does it all kind of fit in? What's interesting is this woman, Julia Davis, who I think was like a stunt woman and things like that in the industry and was Brittany's friend for as far as we know. You know, her and her husband made a documentary entitled Top Priority, which, you know, the terror within, which basically you know, was about her witnessing Homeland Security and the Border Patrol, like allowing terrorists to kind of cross our borders. You know, and in that documentary, it claimed that Murphy and Monjack were on the U.S. Department of Homeland Security's watch list, and that U.S. and Immigration Custom Enforcement were trying to kick Monjack out of the country. And because he's a British citizen, so when his visa expired, you know, they were like, get the hell out of here. You know, and that they were doing all this as like scare tactics to stop their very public support of Davis and her documentary. You know, which, like I said, kind of illustrated the laxes in Homeland Security and the laxes of the Border Patrol in allowing terrorists, or knowing the terrorists were crossing the border and allowing them through. So maybe it was. I mean, you never know with these kind of things. Again, this is all alleged. We don't know. You know, this isn't an official investigation. This is what the family did. You know, I think. And
law enforcement, to be clear, law enforcement has said that the Los Angeles Police Department has said that they won't do anything until the coroner says something, and as of the coroner hasn't been directly related. You know, it's a press release by her father. It's not a full investigation. Whether it will be, to find out what's going on, we'll have to wait and see. But it's definitely a nefarious plot going on there, whether it's the government or not.
Or family members. I mean, there's a lot. You don't know. You don't know. It's very, you know, who knows?
Hollywood is a bit like a movie sometimes.
Hollywood Babylon.
It is. It is. So when you're driving down the road, most of the time you don't expect to have to give a blood sample or to be offered a fee for your blood sample. That always seems a little odd. But last week, motorists in Fort Worth, Texas found themselves in a very bizarre situation. At a police roadblock on Beach Street in North Fort Worth, drivers claimed they were forced off the road into a parking lot and asked for either a breath, saliva, or even a blood sample. Apparently, this invasive action is part of a government research study being done by the National Highways Traffic Safety Commission in order to determine the number of drunken or drug-impaired drivers on the streets. The Safety Commission claims the stops are 100% voluntary and completely anonymous. Witnesses, however, feel differently. Quote, I gestured to the guy in front of me that I just wanted to go straight, but he wouldn't let me and forced me into a parking spot. It just doesn't seem right that you can be forced off the road when you're not doing anything wrong, said Kim Cope.
Man, this is like, when I saw this story, I was like, whoa, this is a huge violation of our rights.
Right, and it was one of those stories that I saw in my Facebook feed and kind of did that thing that you do sometimes where you're like, yeah, I'm sure it's not what it's oh, wait.
Yeah.
It's exactly what it seems and worse.
I know. I mean, when you look at, like, you know, Kim Cope was quoted again saying they were asking for cheap swabs. They gave me $10. They would give $10 for that. Also, if you let them take your blood, they would pay you $50 for that. It just doesn't seem right that they should be able to do any of it. If it's voluntary, it's voluntary, and none of it felt voluntary. Right? Because when you have a roadblock where you have officers standing there saying, go over here, and then this is your choices, and hey, we'll pay you for it, but, you know, anytime people see a badge,
right,
they're conditioned to do what the badge says. You know, sadly, that's the case most of the time.
Yeah, and with this situation, you had NBC DFW had confirmed that the survey was done by a government contractor called the Pacific Institute for Research and Evaluations, based in Calverton, Maryland.
Yeah, which is crazy because it's like, wait, this is taking place in Fort Worth, Texas. Now you got this company from Maryland, you know, which the Department National Highway Traffic Safety Administration is like sending down to do their dirty work, you know, to do this.
Right.
And it's just crazy. It's like...
a company spokesman just referred all the questions from the Pacific Institute of Research and Evaluation, referred everything to the National Highway Safety Administration.
Of course they would.
Here's the thing: it was a private corporate. It was a private contractors pulling people off the road.
Right, with help. You know, I mean, okay, you got an agency spokesman sent an email confirming that the government's doing this and conducting surveys in 30 cities across the country. So, you know, in an effort to reduce impaired driving accidents. So what they're trying to do is saying, like, okay, we're going to pull you off the road. You can have a breathalyzer, spit test, or blood test to see if you have any narcotics or booze in your system, because we want to see how many people are driving drunk or impaired. That's that's the cover story for this. You know, to me, it feels more like either A, someone's really stupid if they think they can pull this off, in the sense that, like, if someone's impaired and driving, why the hell would they, if it's voluntary, why the hell would they voluntarily stop?
Yeah, I'm sorry. If you get pulled over and somebody tells you, hey, we'll give you $50 for your blood, because we're doing a study on drunk driving, don't give them your blood.
No, because I'm sorry, they say it's anonymous and all that.
No.
To me, it's like conditioning. It's that same kind of principle. It's police state conditioning at the end of the day.
Right.
You know, and what's worse
there's a cone, there's a sign, get in the parking
here,
lot,
give us your
there's a guy
blood,
with a
give us your
badge.
spit.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's
Here's
just a
$50.
violation.
Thanks.
It's such an invasion of your rights, and they can claim voluntary all they want, but come on, come on. They know the conditioning at work. I mean, what's worse is you got the National Highway Traffic Administration who's spending $7.9 million on this survey for the next 3 years.
Yeah.
Next 3 years.
Which I don't understand. Why don't you put $7.9 million into hiring more officers and hiring more, doing something about drunk driving, doing actually something about it?
If you worry about drunk driving and things like that, put $7.9 million into treatment.
Right.
You know, for alcoholism and things like that. You know?
Maybe when someone gets a DUI, you make them go to rehab, or you make them go somewhere else, as opposed to just shoving people in jail for a disease. Or, I mean, it's just this thing of being like, what, you're going to go catch people and you're going to figure out how many well, we were saying about how it's a private contractor, and how are you, well, you know, how does one, you know, throw a badge? So people were wondering what the police involvement was, because they assumed, well, hi, I'm supposed to do this. The Fort Worth police had earlier stated that they could not find any record of police involvement, that no officers were actually involved in it, which means that there was just a private contractor out there.
People pretending to be police?
Pretending to be police officers, but a police spokesman, Sergeant Kelly Peel, said that Tuesday that the department's traffic division coordinated with the NHTSA, which is the National Highway Traffic Safety, on the use of off-duty officers. So they did have off-duty officers there, which is what it is. Nobody knows that those guys are off-duty.
No.
They're guys in badges with guns and flashlights in your face, and they're telling you, yeah, would you like to voluntarily give us your blood? We're doing a study on drunk driving and drug use.
Voluntarily give your government the blood. Yeah.
I don't voluntarily give my blood to
and
anybody.
And like I said,
if
it's voluntary, anybody, like, that's what makes this thing so, like, you punch holes right in it, because if it's voluntary, ain't no drunk gonna be like, yeah, sure, test me. I just had like a 6-pack of Coors. I'm like, sure.
I'm good.
You know?
Yeah, right. I wonder if I got, it's like, ooh, I bet I made it to, I bet I might be illegal today. Who would stop? It's one of those things.
Nice synchronistic,
Nice synchronistic
sipping there.
drink
That was
for
good. That was really slick.
Thanks, guys. we plan this stuff for hours and hours. Well, things I don't like doing. Paying taxes, doing my taxes, dealing with taxes. The word taxes, don't like it. It's taxing. Well, now 3 members of Congress are looking to abolish the IRS by repealing the 16th Amendment, which would effectively end corporate and personal income tax. Yay! Representatives Jim Bridenstine, a Republican from Oklahoma, Ron DeSantis, a Republican from Florida, and Thomas Massie, a Republican from Kentucky, have banded together and introduced House Joint Resolution 104, an amendment to the Constitution of the United States to repeal the 16th article of the amendment. In an announcement about the plan, Representative Bridenstine charges that the, quote, personal and corporate income tax is a punitive tax on productive effort, which discourages investment, innovation, risk-taking, and job formation within the United States, end quote. Now, don't get too excited just yet. A constitutional amendment can be repealed by another amendment. However, it requires the approval of 3/4 of the states.
I mean, that's a big one to try to get over. I mean, you're going to go and try to get 3/4 of the states to repeal this, was it the 16th Amendment?
Yeah.
Which is a big one. That's
going
to be hard to repeal. But I do like the fact that we're relooking at the IRS and you have people out there trying to figure out a new tax system, because we desperately need a new system in this country.
And that's it. You have a group supporting the amendment strategy are Americans for Limited Government, Americans for Fair Taxation, and the Tea Party Patriots, Free Market American Competitive Governance Action. It's a wide group. One thing we can all agree on, whether you're, Republican, Democrat, Tea Party, Green, is that the tax system, the personal income and corporate tax system in this country is awful, and it is burying us.
Yes.
And that's a huge piece of it.
I agree. But Cynthia Cinnavaro of Americans for Fair Taxation had a great quote on this. She said, "For 100 years, both parties have used the IRS as a tool of extreme partisan manipulation. Washington's elected elite refuse to accept the damage the IRS has done to innocent citizens, small businesses, and our nation's economy. Both parties are now boldly claiming comprehensive tax reform, staging controlled feedback tours designed to get the answer they want while putting the American people back to sleep so their beloved income tax code remains status quo. The only way to stop the IRS monster is to remove the source of the power that created it, the 16th Amendment and the federal income tax." Those are bold, great words from Cynthia, and I agree with them.
They're very simple. I mean, that's the thing about it. You have to look at how corrupt and useless it is. It's not even a good way to raise money. It's a terrible way to raise money.
No, because it's like right now, I think it's like the numbers say you work, almost 2.5, almost 3 days out of your week for the government.
Yep.
And they get that money first. I mean, wouldn't it be great to get your paycheck and actually get that number that you never see, the gross amount, rather than the number like, all right, we're going to take our half first, you get the rest.
Yeah.
Sorry, it really
fair.
doesn't ring true with me.
Well, and like they were saying, it keeps people from, it's not helping anything. It's not helping the economy. It's not driving jobs. It's making it worse. There's a million. I don't have the perfect, it's not like, oh, here everyone, here's my great tax idea and here's my plan and it's all perfectly worked out. But I'm also a big supporter of looking into, sales taxes as being a driver, because at the end of the day, I'd rather have a check that was $500 at the end of my paycheck, at the end of the week, and take that $500 and go spend it, and go spend it in a store, and go spend it paying my bills and keeping other people in a job, so that cash flow is happening within the communities.
I've always been interested in looking into like a flat sales tax or something like that. I mean, there's all sorts of really brilliant minds out there with really good alternatives to a fair tax system that's not catered to the super rich or loopholes, that's not catered to take care of people that don't deserve to be taken care of. We need just a fair tax system. That's why when I say like a national sales tax or something like that, to me that looking into that kind of rings fair to me, because why then it's up to me to spend my own money. I can decide what I want to be taxed on, rather than you just taking my money right away. I can, and plus what's great about a national sales tax is then, hey man, you get everybody Like even if there's like, let's say the drug dealer who's not claiming any income, you know, and just getting paid on the street, well, he's still got to buy the Ferrari.
Yeah, pay
you know,
sales
so you're
tax.
gonna nail him on that tax. You know, so I mean, there's really good alternatives out there. We just have to look for it and find it.
Yeah, there was a really good case, another quote by lawyer Tom Cryer. In his case, we talked about it, there's a case where he had fought and won against the constitutionality of him paying an income tax. I believe it was like a $75,000 warrant. They said, no, you don't. You proved your case. He won the jury decision, not guilty of failure to file income taxes for 2 years. And what he said about this is, quote, the IRS lets Walmart sell $1 trillion worth of goods, but they can back out their cost of goods before being taxed. The IRS considers, in the case of a Walmart wage earner, 100% of what he takes in is profit, but he's using his life, energy, and work span and depleting it as he goes. Working is a God-given fundamental right that is protected under the Constitution and can't be taxed any more than exercising freedom of speech, end quote. I like that.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan.
I mean, the only thing I think that I kind of disagree with, like Bridenstine and DeSantis, is you know, you abolish the income tax on our citizens, but I don't know if I quite agree with ending corporate tax. You know, because
Well,
there's
not
a
in the
certain,
system it is
because
now
I'm
either.
sorry, a corporation isn't an individual.
Right.
You know, they're a corporation, and I know that we've, you know, with Citizens United and things like that, we've given corporations the rights of individuals, but they shouldn't have those rights.
Well, but at the same time, I think that's where something like a sales tax really is the way to go, because companies have to buy things. And if you're levying a sales tax on industrial goods and those sort of things and the things that they're using, corporations should be paying for all of that. Every dime they spend, they should be taxed on on a sales tax or something, because they can't get around it. They have to buy goods. You don't have to run people down. You don't have to be putting people in jail for tax evasion. Those people will be out spending their money, and the money will go into our coffers and help people. And it can be regionalized for areas. It's like, this needs more, this needs more.
And what's great about, like I said, like there's a lot of great minds that look into this, and what I really, the great thing, I think my dad's even said it before, is that the great thing about kind of ending the income tax, well, people always say, what do you do with the IRS? Well, you either disband the IRS, or you remodel the IRS to keep track of government spending.
Right.
And turn the IRS as a watchdog on government spending to make sure that our government is using our tax system correctly and not spending $10,000 on a hammer. And not like allowing the Pentagon to shuffle and move, financing all over and keep things a secret and, all of that.
You take half of the staff of the IRS and just have them audit the Pentagon for the next 50 years, and they might actually get through it. And the other half can oversee the sales tax. Done. Simple. I don't know why things are so complicated for you people in Washington. Speaking of things that are complicated, the Russians. The Russians are always complicated. In recent months, the Central Intelligence Agency and the Pentagon, as we discussed, have been quietly waging a campaign to stop the State Department from allowing a company called Roscosmos, the Russian space agency, to build about half a dozen monitor stations on United States soil. Well, Russia contends that these monitor stations would significantly improve the accuracy and reliability of Moscow's version of the Global Positioning System, or more commonly referred to as GPS. The CIA and the Pentagon suspect that the monitor stations would give the Russians a foothold on American territory that would sharpen the accuracy of Moscow's satellite-steered weapons, and they believe could also give the Russians an opening to snoop on the United States within its borders. Who would do that? Administration officials have delayed a final decision until the Russians provide more information on these stations.
Yeah, I love it when the CIA and them are like, whoa, the Russians are coming to spy on us and all that stuff. That's just hilarious to me.
Yeah, the pot and kettle of American geopolitics is always quite
boggles
amusing.
my mind that at the height of all this news report about us spying on everyone around the globe and their dog, we're sitting here worried about the Russians coming to spy on us.
To throw up some towers for their GPS. They don't know where we are. They need to put in a tower in our backyard to be able to hit us with a missile.
Let's be honest.
That's the big one, the big hard point.
I say this a lot, but let's be honest. At the end of the day, could they use these things to spy on us? Of course.
Yeah.
So you want to have a little bit of due diligence and make sure that it is what they say it is. But at the same time, let's not start a flag, let's not run up the flagpole and be like, oh my God, look out for Russia. This Russian effort is part of a larger global race by several countries, including China and the European Union nations, to perfect their own GPS systems to challenge the dominance of the American GPS. Like right now, we kind of corner the market on GPS systems. So what's wrong with the rest of the globe getting their own? I don't see anything wrong with that.
That's capitalism. It's called competitive. You have competition. You get better.
They have every right. If we can build GPS systems around the world and use that, they have every right to do the same. Yeah. A former senior official in the State Department's Office of Space and Advanced Technology said, they don't want to be reliant on the American system and believe that their systems, like GPS, will spawn other industries and applications. They feel as though they are losing a technological edge to us in an important market. Look at everything GPS has done on things like your phone and the movement of ships and planes. He's giving this quote in response to like why these other countries, China, Russia, European Union nations, would want to build, you know, their own versions of our GPS system. Like I said, this doesn't scare me. It's logical.
No, and if you don't understand, like GPS itself is the idea of being this global positioning service. What it does is when we say the Americans, like we have GPS, is that it is based on our satellites and our towers of relay. And of course, we use other people's satellites to hook up all the GPS. So when you look on your phone, you're like, oh, where's the closest ice cream parlor? It's actually bouncing off satellites, and probably Russian satellites that we rent use from, to bounce around the world and sort of do this. Looking for a better way to do that, like we said, is about competition. There's some other people speaking out about it because it seems so nefarious. You can't let the Russians be putting towers in. Representative Mike D. Rogers, not that Mike Rogers, who we've talked about
Not
before.
the NSA sitting on the board Mike Rogers, different Mike Rogers.
There are two, same party, same name. Not the same guy. Mike D. Rogers, who is a Republican from Alabama, had this to say. He's the chairman of the House Armed Services Subcommittee. He said, quote, I would like to understand why the United States would be interested in enabling a GPS competitor like Russia GLONASS when the world's reliance on GPS is a clear advantage to the United States on multiple levels, end quote.
Well, Mike, I'm sorry. Free market economy. They get to do that. Like, I mean, what the hell, Mike? You're a Republican. Don't you support free market economics?
I know, it's like, well, we should be able to put our stuff anywhere we want, but if we already have global dominance over it, like, why would we let somebody come in and try to, you know, do this better or do a better job?
Exactly, and the Russians have they have a very, logical reason to fear it. I mean, like they say, accepting one country's dominance of the global positioning, Russians fear would give the United States some serious strategic advantages militarily. The Russians' worst fear is that Americans could potentially manipulate the signals and send erroneous information to Russia's armed forces, which they could if they wanted to hack in the system and do. You know, in today's age of like the NSA and all of the spying and all of the skullduggery that we're getting caught for, I don't think it's out of the realm of reality to be surprised that the Russians would be worried about how we would use any global technology system. You know, it's just insane.
It's a big duh moment. It's this thing of being like, you can't understand why someone wouldn't want to rely on what you're saying and put it into. I think there was.
Well, the big one,
that you were saying, it just boggles my mind.
The big hypocrisy of it all is, if we remember from the Edward Snowden leaks, we found out about the NSA's X-key score, which 150 sites across the globe, over 700 servers, including one in Moscow. So what? We can go put secret servers, mind you. At least Russia's upfront about these GPS
things. They asked permission.
Yeah, we're putting secret servers in their country so we can allow the NSA to hack and spy and do all their nefarious shit. But whoa, far be it from us to allow anyone within our borders.
Not in my backyard.
It's that same two-faced hypocrisy that we see from our government constantly. Constantly.
Speaking of two-faced government hypocrisy, have you heard about TPP? Just kidding. No, I'm not. The highly secretive Trans-Pacific Partnership took some hits this week thanks to WikiLeaks and Congress. Yep, you heard that right. Congress. WikiLeaks published the partnership's chapter Intellectual Property Rights, which exposes that the TPP will curtail internet freedom, access to health care will become even more expensive, and access to information will be undermined. Meanwhile, several members of our House of Representatives stepped up efforts to stop President Obama from implementing the Fast Track Trade Promotion Authority, which would allow Obama to sign the Trans-Pacific Partnership before Congress even has a chance to review the partnership. Without fast track To guarantee the passage of TPP, many nations involved with the TPP will be less likely to agree to demands by the U.S. and its corporate handlers.
We haven't talked a lot yet about the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and the more you look into this, just nasty corporate and national agreement.
Yeah, it's really not okay. And why you should, we'll go into why you should be really uncomfortable by this thing.
With this one.
The TPP is the largest ever economic treaty, encompassing nations representing more than 40% of the world's GDP.
Yeah.
So gross national product, gross domestic product, like all the money in the world, it covers 40% of the world's money.
That's a monstrous.
Yeah, that's a huge
monstrous, economic treaty, and we had to learn from the past because NAFTA's treated us so well.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of economic treaties.
That was a banger.
WikiLeaks released this text. It comes ahead of a decisive TPP chief negotiation summit in Salt Lake City, Utah. The 19th to the 24th of November, right now, happening now. So hey, if you're in Utah and you don't like this, get out there, find where they're doing this summit and get out there and protest this. Because this thing is dangerous.
It's really dangerous.
Very dangerous. I mean, you have Rodrigo Contreras, Chile's lead TPP negotiator, quit, negotiating for Chile to warn people of the dangers of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, highlighting how big financial institutions will dominate their governments and how the Trans-Pacific Partnership will become a threat for all of our countries. The guy quit. The guy that Chile sent there to help negotiate this trade thing said, "Whoa, this is screwed up.
It's too much." Well, a major goal of U.S. multinational corporations for TPP, which is these large American-based companies that are sort of all around the world, which is really what this is about. It isn't about all those international companies. It's about American-based companies that are all over the world, and being able to sort of control all of that. That's my opinion of it, at least. The idea is that they want to impose on corporations a set of extreme foreign investor privileges and rights, and their private enforcement through this sort of investor state system. Like I was saying, this system elevates each TPP signatory country's government and above all of us citizens. So the idea is that what this does is goes in and gives these corporations that are doing business, and these are foreign investors going into a foreign country, putting in your business, and then putting in a set of rules in place that put your needs and your rights above those of the people in that country and the people of this country as well.
You summed it up perfect. Basically, it allows these multinational corporations to run the table.
Their own set of rules.
They won't be held accountable to laws. They'll have their own kind of, I think there was even some talk, it's a highly secretive agreement, and we're kind of getting bits and pieces of it would go, but there was even talk about having these panels that supersede national laws in the countries that, there'll be a panel of these chairmen of all these corporations will sit there, and then they'll say well, we don't like this law over here that you're accusing us of breaking, so we're going to supersede that because we're part of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. It's really screwed up. In the United States, however, we are fighting back. Cities and counties are beginning to pass TPP-free zones, saying that they will not obey the Trans-Pacific Partnership if it becomes law. These local governments are concerned with provisions that would not allow them to give preference to buying U.S. goods or other provisions that undermine their sovereignty. So this kind of trade thing would force small cities and things like that to buy from overseas markets when they don't need to. They can buy locally.
Right. And that goes all the way down to, this can affect down to a municipal level, where towns or counties are forced to buy certain goods, whether it's salt for roads or equipment like trucks, that if the U.S. government has this Trans-Pacific Partnership, that they could be forced into buying, say, a truck from a company in China as opposed to buying a truck from the guy down the street, but that they're forced as a municipality or as a county. That's what it opens the door to. That's really even more scary than that, is that the TPP is a forerunner to a much more scarier sort of thing. The equally secret US-EU pact, which was called TTIP, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, for which Obama had initiated negotiations in January of this year. Together, we go back to the gross domestic product of what we're talking about. So TPP covers 40% of all the money in the world. Well, these two, the TTP and the TTIP, together will cover more than 60% of the global GDP. 60%
You talk about
will
new
fall
world
under a set of
order.
rules that don't follow law, that
Yeah.
don't follow
That have
anything
their
that's
own.
going,
Yeah.
that has its own set of laws. 60% of the money in this world moving around, and the business that takes care of that and what happens around it has its own set of laws. And those laws were bought by corporations.
Yeah, no, this is your new world order. If these two kind of trade pacts pass, and the problem with it is like they're not being upfront with the citizens about it.
Right.
Everything is done in secret. Everything is done behind closed doors. If what they were doing was above board, and if what they were doing was for the benefit of all of us, they would allow us to see what they're negotiating.
Right.
You know, they would allow us to see, well, wait, how much power are you giving to these multinational corporations as opposed to the nation states that are part of this pact? And the fact that he wants to fast track it through Congress, you know, without even allowing them to see it is unconstitutional. They have to be able to see it. You know, it's very, very gross stuff. Very, very. And I strongly suggest, you know, there's a lot of great websites out there that have a lot of great information on the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And I suggest you get out there and check them out, you know, all our viewers.
I think it's one of those, as we always talk about, getting in touch with your congressmen and your senators and your elected officials, and hey, down to municipalities, find out if your city will be affected by this, or let them know. Just be like, look, there's going to be problems, and I want to know what you're going to do about it. But there needs to be a clear message from citizens to their elected officials that these sort of deals are unacceptable. This could bring everything down, like we talked about. It's going to affect everything from healthcare to the cost of your food. And that's not okay. Especially when they do it in secret. That's when things are nefarious. Sweet. So much nefariousness in the world. There was a really interesting report. We talk a lot about prisons, and you and I have discussed on this show the effect that the prison system has in this country. And how much it is sort of ruining communities and people and all of that. Well, the ACLU recently released a major study titled A Living Death, Life Without Parole for Nonviolent Offenses. The study documents scores of cases across the country showing defendants getting life without parole for such crimes as having a crack pipe, siphoning gasoline, and even shoplifting a $159 jacket. The report found 3,278 prisoners serving life without parole in 2012 for nonviolent crimes, of which 79% were for drug offenses. Mandatory sentencing laws are mostly to blame for these outlandish punishments. Many judges have had their hands tied when issuing sentences. Prosecutors share a lot of the blame for being overly aggressive when seeking these convictions. So in a combination of things, you have judges who are forced because of ridiculous laws and legislature. There's your government officials off making laws that force judges into sending people away for these really nonviolent drug crimes and putting them away for life.
Yeah.
And then you have an entire group of very overzealous, you know, young,
DAs
hot
prosecuting
ADAs
attorneys,
who are like, I'm going to get all these drug crimes and then I'll move my way up. It's not about them. I mean, you know, no offense. They're great public defenders. There are amazing prosecutors out there, but let's be clear, a lot of these drug cases are just about getting numbers. It's really just about numbers. It's not because that prosecutor or that office truly feels that they need to do this for the safety of the community.
No,
and
they're
that's
just
their
getting
job.
numbers for elections. That's all they're doing. I mean, a DA got to get elected again, or Attorney General got to get elected again.
Yeah.
Or, you know, we got to get these numbers up. You know.
The number of U.S. prisoners who received life sentences without parole quadrupled between 1992 and 2012.
That's extraordinary.
Quadrupled.
Wow.
We've just taken this huge amount of people and just said, nope, we're just going to lock you up.
Lock you up for life.
Forever.
Damn.
It's
That's nuts.
very strange. More than 18% of nonviolent offenders are serving life without parole in the federal system now and are in for their first offense.
First offense.
Yeah.
18% of nonviolent offenders are serving life for their first offense.
First mistake.
That's messed up, because that, like, I can see it if like someone's had a life of crime and they're violent and all this, and you lock them
Or
up
their
for-
first offense is murder or attempted murder
but
or a
non-violent
sexual
offenders,
assault.
you know,
But no, these
first
are
offense,
not
18,
violent.
that's insane. I mean, one of these stories that you look at, you know, it's like Lance Saltzman of Florida removed a gun from his home that belonged to an abusive stepfather who had used the weapon to threaten his mother repeatedly. According to him. He was convicted of armed burglary, and due to the previous burglary conviction when he was 16, so he was convicted of armed burglary when he was 16, Now he, removed this weapon, got caught with the weapon, and is now sentenced to mandatory life without parole because he took the weapon out of his home because of his abusive stepfather. Now these are his words. Maybe he's not telling the whole truth, but even then, he's just got a gun. He didn't kill anybody. He didn't shoot anybody. He didn't do any. You're sentencing a guy for life in prison for just having a gun. Insane. Insane.
Crazy. Also in the report, another thing from this report, just shocking information. In the state of Illinois, a black person is 33.25 times more likely than a white person to be sentenced to life without parole for a nonviolent crime.
That gets back to one of the major issues of our prison system, that it's
not by
very
chance.
Racially biased.
That's not
very
by chance.
Racially biased. Latinos, African Americans, people like that. Let's be honest. They're putting most of those people behind bars far more than they're putting whites behind bars. And there's a couple of really great movies out there that kind of document this to definitely check out. One of them, I believe, was like Not in Our Backyard, or Not in This House.
Not in This House,
yeah. It's a great documentary on that very thing. You also have another great story. Clarence Aaron, a college student with no prior criminal record, was giving 3 life without parole sentences for his minor role in 2 planned large drug deals, one of which never even took place. He received longer sentences than co-conspirators and spent the past 20 years in prison. Okay, 2 planned large drug dealers, 1 didn't even take place, and this dude's serving 3 life sentences without parole, didn't kill nobody, didn't harm anybody, just wanted to sell some drugs. I'm sorry, I don't care how much someone hates drugs. That's insane.
There's no reason. It's out of control. Ooh, another thing from the report that was really interesting is that black prisoners, again, to bring it up, comprised 91.4% of the nonviolent life without parole population in the state of Louisiana. 91% of prisoners for nonviolent crimes. That's ridiculous. I'm sorry. You can't tell me that's not racially motivated. You can't tell me that the state of Louisiana, I don't care if it's not overt. I don't care that you're sitting there saying, like, it's not, it's just black people do more drug crimes.
Bullshit.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's, if you honestly, the idea that we're all supposed to just like keep our little eyes closed and pretend like this whole prison industrial complex isn't completely racially motivated. It's about money and your own racist bias.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Because I'm sorry, the amount of college kids who get picked up and get caught with a pipe, who should be in prison for life without parole, would be huge. If you can't tell me that the cops couldn't go in and arrest 1,000 kids on a college campus, you're ridiculous. Because you'll walk into anywhere in the inner city and you'll roll through a complex and arrest everyone. Do it in a college and you'll have a bunch of white kids in prison.
It's the basic argument of like the stop and frisk laws in New York City. I'm sorry. If they did stop and frisk on Wall Street, they would get just as many drugs or arms or whatever it is that they do in Brooklyn.
I know.
I'm sorry. It's not about, you can't play that thing of like, it's only the poor communities. Sorry, the rich people do drugs too.
Right. Go down to Wall Street and see how many arrests you could get for narcotics down there. Probably more than in a poor neighborhood. You're probably going to get less narcotics down there.
According to Wall Street insiders that I've actually talked to, Goldman Sachs is one of the biggest drug runners on Wall Street. You need some drugs, you talk to a guy who works for Goldman Sachs. Vincent Winslow, another example of this, was homeless when he acted as a go-between in the sale of 2 $10 bags of marijuana to an undercover cop. $10 bags of marijuana. The seller was not arrested. Based on a decade-old drug possession conviction and unarmed burglaries committed 14 to 24 years earlier, Winslow was sentenced to life without parole. For a $10 bags of marijuana, and the seller didn't even get thrown in, but this guy has a little bit of a record and he gets life without parole. This is gross. It's disgusting to me that we allow this to happen in this country. We're not land of the free if this is what our freedom is.
No, and the crimes that people, like we've said, and to give you this information, what's really important is that these crimes that these people have been sentenced to life in prison for without parole. That means nothing. They sit. There's any chance of them getting out. When combined with their prior convictions include stealing small change from a parked car, a pair of socks, 9 children's videotapes, a pair of work gloves from a department store, a leaf blower, 3 golf clubs, chocolate chip cookies, and a slice of pizza.
These are all things that people were like robbed. Like these are all people that somebody stole and now they're getting life without parole for a chocolate chip cookie. This is Twilight Zone time.
It's Twilight Zone
And it's made to feed the prison industrial complex.
Of
Now we
course.
got these private prisons, we got to fill them up with people. You
I know, as we like.
Yeah. I think the news is almost done.
I think
Wait,
the news
it is
done.
done.
We're done. There's no more. Yeah, from Kim Kardashian to crappy prison systems. I mean, if there's anything that I feel like people should be speaking out on, it's those things. It's about, you know, this prison system, because it's just completely out of hand. We don't have the money to be doing this, and what we could be doing to actually make our lives safer every day, and the things that you can make your family safer and be able to have all of this. It's not feeding into this prison system, and it's finding the states where these laws are. If you have laws like that in your state, get to them, say something,
Yeah,
protest,
fight to overturn these
loud
laws.
it. It's not okay. Because here's the thing, it always seems like, oh, well, I don't live in the inner city and I'm not black, so I probably won't be arrested. Wait until you are.
Yeah.
'Cause
Eventually
at
they'll
some
hit your
point,
doorstep. They'll get
find
your
it.
kids,
They'll find
get
a
your
reason.
uncle, they'll get your brother, your sister, whatever. Eventually they'll
You'll
nail
be,
you.
you know, you're a dissident, you're this, you're on a list, you said something on Facebook, the color of your skin. It's when they decide that what you're doing is illegal, then it is. That's why you have to be careful. You know, this idea of like, well, I'm not doing anything wrong, so I don't care. When they decide you're doing something wrong, then it'll be a problem.
Well, thank you as always for joining us today, Tabitha.
Always. Thank you everyone for your comments and things through Twitter at Enter the Buzzsaw and on Facebook. Please give us, you know, keep your comments coming. And as well, like I said, please check out the JFK panel with Sean and Tyrell. It's amazing. There's also going to be another interview coming up from
Roger Stone, talking about LBJ's involvement in the JFK assassination. It's great stuff.
Exciting. It's good. Stay tuned with us. There's lots and lots of stuff coming this week. And
big
in
interview
the
coming out on Tuesday or Wednesday as well.
It's
So stay
gonna
tuned for that
get
one.
ya.
It's going to be great stuff. Thank you for joining us, Tabitha.
Of course. Thank you.
And that is our show for today. This weekend of the 50th anniversary of John Kennedy's assassination. In honor of that assassination, I would just like to take just 5-second pause of silence in honor of the loss of John Kennedy, which I believe changed the entire course of our history and put us in the hands of fascists. It's my belief. But let's take 5 seconds and remember John Kennedy. Thank you for that moment. As I say every week on this show, we're not told we're loved enough, so I tell you all, I love you. Thank you. Have a great weekend.